works. Hi everybody, it's Cassie and Chris once again with SONday Chronicles. I got really close for some reason. This is episode 21 and it is called Bitter Sweet. So, let's go.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a little while. But go ahead, what is this Bittersweet episode 21 about? I'm really excited about this one.
Yeah, it was inspired by Muji. And everybody's heard me talk about Muji, but to hear him say bittersweet, it resonated with me. And he said, having forgiveness and compassion for those who are bitter or are sweet. And I, throughout this whole thing, have been, and throughout my whole life, have used what I like to call the funnel. Like if something arises, funnel it all the way down to its simplest form. Throughout my journeys, I have understood that there are, there's an actual phrase called Occam's razor.
I'm having a hard time. Keep talking, Chris.
You're not even in it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Occam's razor.
Well, it's because your head keeps getting cut off.
That's fine.
It's awkward.
That's what it looks like.
Anyway, so Occam's razor. The simplest answer is the correct answer.
Normally, typically. And that goes along with the truth. You know the truth by the way it feels. And we've discussed that before in specific talks. Bittersweet. Throughout my observation of myself and humanity, I've come to the conclusion that each of us has a choice to be bitter or a choice to be sweet. I throughout my observations, I've realized that you're brought into this world. You know, I study Lazarus. I've been fortunate enough to be a stay-at-home dad for 15 months. Mm-hmm. And getting to observe his, just, you know, I've always said this before, the children are the closest to the divine. They haven't hopefully had that much indoctrination at 15 months, and they're allowed to be themselves and be sweet. They don't come in bitter.
Yeah, it's that whole, I always feel like there's been a debate about that. I mean, I remember growing up, it's like, are we brought into this world to kill, to be savages, or are we kind and forgiving? And it's the same thing. We start sweet. Look at a child.
Look at a child.
Look at a child.
And then at the same time, I observe what's happening in the world, and you notice everyone's choosing to be bitter. The easiest way to become bitter and vain is to compare yourself to another being. And like we've talked about before, every industry out there is selling that competition aspect, especially the fitness game. And that causes a lot of hidden bitterness. You see a lot of fake friend.
Well, I think if you're bitter, you operate out of here. Yeah. Out of your mind rather than your heart. And we've talked before about that mind to heart journey. And that I think is such a big part. You can look at those operating strictly from here, and you can see how there's a bitterness to them, a bitter attitude, bitter towards life. Versus, go ahead.
No, go.
Versus those who are sweet. Mm-hmm. And I got distracted because you started talking.
I just think it's a trip because it seems like there's so much going on. And I may sound completely Greek to those who aren't focusing on the observation or being aware of themselves, being aware of the world, and there are people out there who just don't give a fuck. They're just clueless to and that's completely fine. It's not their time yet. They'll eventually.
But I like what you were saying, that it seems like there's so much going on in this world. Like, it's just what is going on, and what it boils
really
down to.
Funnel it down.
It's bitter, sweet.
Bitter
and sweet.
Because of free will. Oh, I know where I was going to go. Come into the world sweet as can be. I've had a fascination just recently with like mass murderers, and what twists them off to where that people that eat people. I mean, what in that human being's consciousness made him very bitter, to where that's taken it to a really deep level, but that's extreme forms of bitterness. And I think you're brought in sweet, thrown into instantly an environment that you have nothing to do with, hoping that might be a sweet environment. In my particular situation, it was a very bitter environment due to the indoctrination of religion. It was a confusing thing, which in turn was great for me. Like, I'm completely thankful for that, because I got to see it, which registered something in me that, I've realized, one day I was going to do something with that, and that's what we're doing now. But you're thrown into, some people are thrown into sweet. Then,
life can make you bitter.
Life can make you bitter as fuck. And then that particular sweet environment that you were thrown into, essence. You completely cut off, ego takes over, and you go on a bitter road until life actually pop, because it will, and then checks you a little bit, and then hopefully you find your way back to sweet.
So really, everything you just said, what we're getting at here is, when you look at life, you're either bitter or you're sweet. It's as simple as that. And Chris kind of thought of this based on just the journey that he's been on so far. It really boiled down through the funnel that this is what it's all about. And you start observing not only society, but people in your life. See them as bitter.
Observe yourself first.
Yes, of course.
You may be
bitter. Yeah. You can see the bitterness. You can see the sweetness. And it really doesn't cross. But there are some. We kind of, in our observations of this bittersweet,
you'll see a struggle.
Yeah, there's some that are bitter, but they still have that sweetness, and then there's, and vice versa. So it's
really
that
funny.
Transition from head to heart, it's all.
Yeah, it's like, no, I don't want to go, and this brings
But I'm thinking about competition. I'm thinking about all this. And,
I want to go back here because it's comfortable. I know there's something else, and this is another where I'm at with my specific knowing myself. What is it what is that one fear? I'm going to ask you just to see if you can come off the top of your head with something. That one fear of turning around and going in. Remember who Jung said, people will do whatever it takes
absolutely anything
to avoid
absurd to avoid looking at themselves.
Is there an easy way to get past that? Or you just have to become aware of it? You have to become aware that you're not doing it. Does that make it easier to do?
What, to look at yourself?
Yeah.
You just have to do it.
I think at one point it's different with everybody. You're struggling, and finally you go, okay, I've had enough.
I really don't think people even realize that you're not aware of yourself, or you're not looking at yourself.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think we, as in certain points of our life, don't know we're bitter. I didn't, no one knows that they're bitter if they're bitter.
Oh yeah.
And because that well, like, what are some words that go along with the bitter? The greed,
jealousy,
ego,
hate,
associate, anger,
holding on, unforgiving.
Yeah, no forgiveness, no compassion for others. Yeah.
So we're listing things that have to do with bitter. So like that,
bitter, that would be bitter, and then sweet. compassion, love,
for one with the all,
with the all specifically,
self-aware,
understanding,
very self-aware,
forgiveness. Did we say that? Forgiveness. Those are the things that go along with the sweet, and I'm sure there's some others on both sides. But
start observing not only yourself but people around you in this way.
Yeah.
And it really
without judgment.
Yeah. That's why we say observing, because that's what you're doing. You're simply observing and receiving stimuli.
Observing is why we're here. It's observing is learning. And
but you'll notice, you'll start seeing, it is that simple.
It's
as
really
bitter
that simple. People, and we have that consciousness that.
Well, what sparked you was that, because to go from bitter to sweet is a hell of a journey. That's the journey.
That's the head to heart.
That's the head to heart journey.
That's the thing you said the other day. We start out, before we're even here, we're a part of the divine. We're thrown into here. And then
we try to find our way back.
And then we get our way back to the divine, or I like to call you find your way back into the womb. You're born.
You go back home.
Come back home. And then you get to,
excuse me,
trip out on yourself throughout your
no, the energies are coming. I'm sneezing.
Okay. Energies are coming.
Possible energy shift underway. But no, keep going. I just really thought this was a fascinating topic because it explains so much. You just have to observe.
Well, it takes away it strips all of the other things away and gets it down to 2 words. And if you take away all the complications of life, all the labels that people chase, all the labels that you label yourself, and people don't realize that they're like a NASCAR. People walk around with, like, if their skin, like if you had to get a tattoo for every label that you labeled yourself, you'd be sleeved out, and it would be,
negative.
It would just be insane. And you take away those labels, I think the more the labels go away and then the more the ones you accept that people are judging you with, and you lighten your load, it goes from bitter to sweet. You don't have to try to be sweet.
Well, the whole thing is about being bitter. If you constantly have your
Wait, before I forget, you have to try to be bitter.
Yeah, because we're naturally sweet. Humans are naturally
Think about how much energy you expend to be angry, to be jealous. Yeah. And to know this, it's your fucking fault you're angry or jealous.
Because your feelings are yours.
Your feelings are yours.
Yeah.
And I think if you
no
recognize...
one can give you your feelings.
Yeah.
That was like astonishing to me when I
heard
that. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. Everything how I feel is my fault.
You're where decision. You're at right now because of you. And every decision
admitting that is huge, and it's very life changing to do that.
That's a really good way to turn the mirror around
from bitter and
you stop complaining.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I like that right there.
Read it. Just read it. See what it says.
If you live a life of constantly comparing yourself to others, you will become very bitter. We talk about this a lot, seeking external. Seeking the
I think we talked about this last time. We talked about addictions. All an addiction is seeking happiness externally. The way to cease addictions throughout the whole world is to help those seeking an outward addiction or an outward happiness, whatever it may be, to turn it back in and realize you don't have to be happy. Your default is happy. And I was going... keep going.
I was just going to say exactly what you said. The looking externally,
comparing yourself
you're comparing yourself to others. It leads to bitterness. You become bitter. Whereas the more you look within, the sweeter you become. Because when you look within, you recognize yourself in others. Vice versa.
You see your own beauty.
See your own beauty, but you also see your own faults. You see all these things. And so you start to have compassion for others. Yeah. And that is a sign of sweetness. So those are the two. External, looking in the external, leads to more of life of being bitter.
And bitter and sweet is not necessarily a description. It is a state of being. I'm not going to describe someone...
Because each individual is different.
A state of being of sweetness. I think that is just a state of being. It's not an adjective.
Yeah. Well, you can do sweet things.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I'm saying the state of being would be bitter or sweet.
Yeah.
I try not to come up with clever ways to observe and without judgment. I think that's important.
Well, you learn so much from not only observing yourself, but observing others. I mean, you really, really do. You see. You'll get
this is a trip. As you start to observe yourself, you'll get instances outside that are a reflection of, like, when you become aware of it within yourself. Oh shit!
It shows up outside.
You'll see it somewhere else, and it kind of might it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then you get rid of it, but I don't know.
I don't know what else to say about this, but it's just
simple and sweet, bitter and sweet.
Yeah, I was like, what? No, but this is a shorter video, I think, but I don't know. Who knows how long we've talked, but. Bittersweet. Observe life in that way. Those that are bitter, those that are sweet. It's two different ways you choose to live your life.
And lastly, those that are bitter, some that are bitter are going to be bitter forever.
Yeah, you can't change someone who doesn't want to know more about who they are.
You can't change someone, period.
Yeah.
You can't change anybody. They're going to have to do it themselves. There will be some that stay bitter for as long as their term here. And pat them on the back, take an axe, chop the string. It lightens your load. It lightens your load. It allows them to give their own...
As long as you do, follow your heart, because that's that sweetness. Follow your heart. If someone you're there for... You're helping them as much as you can, but it gets to a point where you realize there's no way it's going to change. You have to let go or be dragged.
Yeah. Let go, and whatever happens. Set your forgiveness, set your all that.
But these things will happen. You'll be kind of realize that you're going to be letting go of some people in your life because you've seen that they're bitter versus the road that you're trying to take.
If you want to hit that sweet route, you can't have any bitter.
And that means not only you, bitterness inside, that means people around you. You don't have any bitter people around you.
We're going to do a talk on seclusion here soon. We're going to do a talk, I talked about my 15-month stay-at-home dad. That's been part of my vow of silence. That's been part of my seclusion. You'll hear, anyone that has gone through this similar experience, they go into some sort of...
they disappear for a while.
Yeah. And it's important to be able to let go for a couple of years, and I've recently let go of everything. It's just.
And that's part of, once again, what we're talking about tonight. It's part of that journey of the.
I had the beginning of my journey was involved in social media, and then it slowly got to where this started to occur, and. We've got such a fascinating story going on in the world that it was neat to kind of look at every once in a while, and it just has become so ridiculous.
If you're watching news all the time and really grabbing onto the things happening in the world, I feel like it would start to make me bitter. I feel and that's
you're
why
associated with either side.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Anything going on, if you're attaching yourself to anything in the media and worried and scared, you're just gonna become bitter.
You're gonna become bitter and pissed off.
Because those all go together. That anger, that.
Yeah, I think that when you kind of step away from it and just view it for what it is, be respectful of it, know that it has to be that way, and then
strive to be what you want to be. Really, I mean, not strive to be, but just be you. And the way you are just able to be you is by looking within.
I think the natural state of being is sweet. Yeah. But
I think that was. I don't have anything else. Do you?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll be back.